His name is Stephen Johnson, and he's come to. Would you say debate is fair?
No, it's not. It's not that I want to debate. It's that I want to inform. Mostly. Okay. So
I think at least a good conversation. Shane was talking about this before the show, but you have a quote where you say that you don't let a disagreement come between friends.
Right. That was a Thomas Jefferson quote.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that it was from you.
You were. I don't think we. I don't. So this kind of came about. And Stephen, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. And this came about. You had mentioned to me before because of our episode that was centered around the Texas case where there was transgendering. It was a very passionate discussion between the two of us.
Yeah, it's episode 136, Transgendering Children in America, the debate.
Yeah, so not too far back. I think you guys had talked. Banks brought it to my attention that, hey, man, I've got somebody that has some real understanding of this matter that kind of disagrees with the episode that we did, a lot of the points that we made, and then I got this friend request online. And then I started to see little things pop up under that particular episode. Mm-hmm. And it was lengthy, right? And to sit there and pound out on keyboards, that
was just one point.
Yeah. Just rebuttals. Man, I don't have the time. And I don't think that a lot of what happens in the virtual world can be it is accepted well because there's not empathy, there's not compassion, there's no nuance. A lot of times it's just, I'm going to try to make a point to win this argument, or and I don't like that. And so I think we went into like maybe two replies or something like that. And just, hey man, you want to come on the show? And
yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you for doing that and taking us up on our offer to have people in that want to, correct us or debate or educate and inform in this case. So I don't know exactly where to begin, but it does stem from episode 137.
136.
I'm sorry, 136.
Yeah. It's fine. I think it's just the way Stephen brought it to my attention was a lot of points of clarification.
Yeah.
And I think it's gonna bring to a healthy debate.
I do have to have to point out first and foremost, Stephen walked in with a 6-pack of Sweetwater, the G13 series. I think the 420 strain was actually the first one they did in this series. If you guys haven't had it, if you like the smell of hemp, man, this IPA is... It's a dank tank. I mean, it is
a dank tank. I like that.
That's what they call them.
I was trying to show you earlier. You didn't see, but at the bottom of the bottle it says, "Don't float the mainstream."
That's right.
No, they all say that.
Yeah,
really?
that's their motto.
That's the first time I've ever seen.
I've got it on like one of their first T-shirts down.
I'm here trying to inform you guys.
They've got them all over their glasses. They've got glasses that say that. Yeah.
So cheers to coming in.
Cheers, guys.
New friends and getting together again, man. This is. I love it. I mean, it's Sunday afternoon here in the Bible Belt, and we're having a beer here at 12:40 in the afternoon. I've got coffee and water. It's probably been. I
did buy mine yesterday, though.
It's been about 20 years since I had all this liquid going on all at the same time. But no, hey, I'm very interested to learn and see a perspective that I have not been exposed to in this, and you have a laundry list over there right now of points that we're going to try to get through in an hour and a half time frame. So first and foremost, do you want to talk about anything to begin with before we get into this?
Well, no, I just wanted to start off just with the title of the show itself.
That was Banks. It's not it.
It's me.
Okay, so the title of the show in the term transgendering.
I don't think it's a real word.
It's not.
It's a made up word by me.
It's not a real word. So I was just wanting clarification on what the actual word means. So does it imply that parents are brainwashing their kids into being transgender, or does
the word itself? No. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Okay. The other point was, do you believe that they're forcing their kids into decisions that?
So the title of the episode wasn't made to imply anything besides there's people who are transgendering in America. So that's
I think a better term would be transitioning of kids in America than transgender, because to me transgendering implies that it's being forced on someone, or that they're being brainwashed into it.
Okay.
I mean, I can see that. I don't see much of a difference between transitioning and transgendering. Both of them, in regards to children.
Can you enlighten us? First and foremost, transgendering, not a real word.
Not a real word.
Transitioning, real word.
That is a real word.
Okay,
yes.
help. Let's start with some definitions.
Okay.
I think
that's a good idea.
Principally
too.
important to start with. All right, this is how we are defining things in this show. So, transitioning, real word. What does it mean?
Okay, there's multiple different meanings of that word.
Okay.
Obviously, and in this case for transgender kids, there are actually different forms of transitioning. One of the most important things to keep in mind throughout the entire episode is that there is social transition, and then there's medical transition.
Okay.
A lot of people don't understand that social transition is just simply allowing kids to be who they are, who express themselves the way they want to. Whether that's changing pronouns or wearing a dress or growing their hair long,
So
it's not anything medical.
Let's slow down because I think I probably represent a large majority of this audience in terms of understanding. Okay, when you say transitioning kids or letting them be what they want to be, what does that entail? Like in terms of
It depends on the kid. It's
Okay.
up to the kid. So basically, it's just giving the kid the freedom and liberty to do what they want to do.
Okay.
But wouldn't that also be letting, like, they could also just not want to change? So transitioning would be a different action than just giving them freedom. Freedom could be them changing something about themselves or being more like they want to be, or just being what they already are. So transition would be a different act than just that.
Well, no, it is something than what they are. It's something other than what they are, because if a child is born assigned male at birth, then they typically play with boys' toys. They watch boys' shows. They have a boy name.
what is that, XY or is that XX? In terms of genetics,
I think it's XY.
okay, I think so too.
I think
So typical 99.999% of people who are XY, in terms of gender and sex. I think this is important too, because I don't think a lot of people understand. You agree sex is mostly binary. Sex, not gender.
Well, mostly is the caveat, because
Yeah,
there are exceptions.
So yeah, I agree with you. So there's
So if we take out the outliers,
the outliers.
the biological outliers.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take them out though. That would
I'm talking about the
equate-
biological outliers just for this conversation of there's X, and XY, and that's it.
But there's not. I mean, that
biologically,
no, there is actually more than that.
Okay.
Biologically, there is human beings who have XXY or
that's
yeah.
why I said taking out the outliers.
Outlier. Fraction of a percent, right?
That this is not to discredit them whatsoever.
No, they
Right.
exist.
Well,
They're just a very, very, very small
they do it.
percentage.
Yeah, right.
people.
Of course, and so are transgender people. It's a very minute fraction of the population.
Sure.
So yes, you can't take them out completely because
No.
they do exist.
I'm just saying, per the norm, a natural norm is there's a XY is what we term a boy, and
Right.
XX is a girl, and then we have a fraction of a percent that could be what you were saying, XXY, XX.
Yeah, there's multiple different
XYX or
versions of
whatever it
Right,
is, right?
Yeah.
And that's no kidding genetic.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't disagree.
I think we all agree.
I have no consternation with that whatsoever. I fully accept that there are parts of any species, right? Any species at all that do not fit the norm. They're outliers.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're all in agreement, and I want to make sure I describe that. So for the most part, sex is binary.
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
Biological sex is
So
binary.
Gender.
Right.
Gender is I think people get into this weird world where sex we don't understand as we understand as binary for the most part. Gender is often sometimes very much confused within diction to with the same thing. So if you're a gender, it's not that you're XY or XX. It's that you fit a social stereotype that is really made up of culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an argument that most people have is that gender is very cultural.
I agree.
It's not really it's not as scientific as like chromosomes.
Well, I don't think
Well,
I don't think it's scientific.
I think even the most conservative of people, and conservative is a weird term, but just bear with me, would agree that there are some men that are more masculine and some men that are more feminine.
Oh, absolutely.
And
the
that
same goes for
alone,
women. Yeah,
if they're going to be consistent, is them saying that, well, gender is somewhat fluid. And they might not like those words, but that's kind of what they're doing.
Gender fluidity. Well, and I'll definitely, I mean, you can observe this within our own culture, right? You can observe gender roles being extremely different within a species. I mean, and I'll point this out just because we had talked about it. You know, that episode where I talked about the further you go north, the more freedom that you're going to have, right? Basically, to a certain degree, like the further you are going to live in inhospitable country.
Sure, if you're in Fairbanks, Alaska, you've got a little bit more freedom because
so
less people.
These girls, girls that are out there doing things that most men, and I'm talking, guys that would consider them to be alpha males, a man's man, would not be doing up there because they have to do it to survive, right? It's just different culture.
Right. Yeah, and even in, like, speaking of other species, like I believe it's the clownfish, where if a female in the school dies, the male will actually change genders. Like, not just genders, they will change sex.
Change sex.
Yeah, like they have the capability of
like
actually
amphibians.
changing sex and performing biological functions of the other sex.
Right.
So.
Their anatomy changes?
Yes.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we've got sex for the most part dialed in, minus a very small fraction, and we've got gender, which we all now understand each other's definitions at least.
Yeah.
And I think
we kind of have the same.
I think we're pretty much in agreement on.
We might not agree on all the genders because you haven't talked about them or
I
all
don't
the
think you
areas
can.
there, but we agree that it is fluid.
Do you guys
to some
agree?
degree.
Would you guys agree that gender is an individual thing?
Absolutely, it's an internal thing.
Yeah.
That only the person who experiences it can.
So it's really.
define.
Do you think it's really more of a social construct that
A lot of it is.
that collectivists like to do to try to group people?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily malicious.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point that I didn't think I would bring up, but I saw somebody post something the other day about how the need for society to keep the gender binary the way it is kind of even a little bit conspiracy to keep men wanting to fight war, and which is an interesting concept if you really go into that. But I didn't go much more into it. I saw it
funny.
and I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like.
That's funny, actually, because I have a problem every so often with a few friends that I'm in a group text messaging thing with, and they'll say something that's very like alpha that I don't have necessarily a problem with being alpha in general, but they'll say something like, we'll be having a political discussion, and they'll say something like, well, if somebody like whistled at my girlfriend, I'd beat them up. And I'll just make a point like, hey, they're supposed libertarian-ish type people. I'll make the point of, hey, that goes against the non-aggression principle.
Oh, yeah,
but they'll feel very comfortable being like, Bank, stop being lame. And I'll be like, hey, it doesn't. But that is something that would. So that's not war.
I think I've actually seen you make comments like that before.
Yeah, but it's very possible.
I got threatened yesterday by somebody.
That annoys me because it feels like that is more society dictating that they're either allowed or should be like that. It's one or the other. Different people are going to react different ways by social pressure. Some are happy to have this construct that they can adapt to because they have aggression to put out there, or some are just scared to act differently, and so they just act like everybody else. But those two things happen a lot, and it makes me sad in this specific situation when it's my libertarianish friends who use it to justify violence. And as much as you might not ever want somebody to whistle or denigrate your girlfriend or wife, if it's words, you can use words back. You can't use force back.
Right, exactly.
So.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we've got a good starting place, not only for the three of us, but also for our audience to understand us now. Okay, so let's get into this list because
that was number one on the list. Number two on the list, the next term, It's a lot. A lot of it's just defining terms.
Sure. Yeah. Right on.
So the next term is chemical castration.
Okay.
I wanted to define that.
So
what is that? What does that mean to you, and how do you perceive that?
So chemical castration, I understand it in a couple different forms. Okay. Obviously, there is more along the lines of chemical castration, what you would do to a quote unquote sex offender, right? Where if a guy's out raping people, then he goes in, they give him, some chemicals that make him absolutely impotent. And
okay, but that's not what it is.
No. That's
how you perceive
that's one of the
term.
That's one of the
but
forms. That's it. So there's two.
That's my point, though, is because that is the perceived idea of that term, but that's not actually what it is. So I want to explain what actual even in
for
a
sex offender.
For a sex offender,
okay.
Yes. Even for a sex offender, the term chemical castration does not make them impotent.
Okay.
That's not what it is.
What does it do?
It is an actual drug that they put in their body. It's called anaphrodisiac or whatever. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Anaphrodisiac drugs.
Yeah. So these drugs reduce hormone, or they don't. Well, they can do either one depending on the drug, but they can either reduce hormones or they can reduce the effects that hormones have on your body by blocking receptors. Okay.
What's the effect though of reducing those hormones?
I'm getting to that. So it does not sterilize these people. Like, does not make them impotent. That's not what it does. It lowers the hormone levels, and it's believed that the hormone levels are what causes the libido and the sex drive. So if you lower hormone levels, then you have less of a sex drive, less of a libido to commit a crime. But it does not make them impotent.
Like if they're pedophiles, in this specific context, right?
Right, exactly.
So basically, we're conducting a science experiment to see, I should say, to ensure public safety on a person by introducing chemicals that don't necessarily make it impossible for these people not to molest somebody physically.
No, it is not impossible.
Phallically.
It does not make it impossible. They can still actually do it.
So phallically, they are still, and here's it.
Like, body parts still function.
Yeah. So this is what if you're out there and this is a sensitive subject for your kids, and your kids usually listen to this kind of stuff,
good point.
I want to take this minute and just say, hey, listen, this is going to be a mature conversation, guys. And I think most people in this crowd and your kids can handle that kind of thing. But at the same time, what we're probably going to talk about are some very adult things. So if now's the time, turn it off, or listen. It's your choice. But so phallically, these guys can still get an erection,
yes,
and still penetrate.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a different understanding than I had.
I figured that.
They can potentially. But because on the things that I'm reading, it says that it has the capacity to reduce sex drive, compulsive sexual fantasies, and capacity for sexual arousal. So if you reduce the hormones enough, it has a capacity for that.
To what?
To reduce the capacity for sexual arousal.
Yeah, like it depends on the medication.
It depends on the individual again.
Yeah, but that's not the intent of it, though. That's not what the ultimate goal is. It can happen, like if it's called atrophy, like muscle atrophy. If you don't use something often enough, it stops working.
Okay.
So that's basically what's happening. It's not because of the actual chemical that's doing it. It's the fact that it's not being used anymore. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
And I mean,
so I guess the question is: are these drugs that are being used for this purpose on treatment of sex offenders the same as the drugs that are being used for?
Some of them are, and some of them aren't.
Great question.
It depends on the country where the drugs are being prescribed.
Depends on the drug.
Yeah, because there's like a list of probably 30 different drugs that fit in this category.
So what we're doing now, people, is we're differentiating between criminal castration, like chemical castration, and what is used in terms of transitioning a child or an adult in terms of drugs. Okay.
Right.
So it can and can't, or it could or it could not. Would you say there's quite a few different drugs out there?
Yeah, I'd say there's probably about 30.
So is this all approved by FDA and all that stuff as well, or is it?
Well, Not that matters, but
No.
This is the right podcast to say
Yeah,
that.
right.
No, and I definitely agree with that statement.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, I guess what I'm asking is, are these all things? Because a lot of times government gets involved in cases like what we saw in Texas here. Government gets involved, and so if they're involved, when we're working within their silly framework of what's medically approved
Right.
and crap, right? So are those 30 kind of I guess what I'm asking is, are those kind of what you understand as being approved by FDA?
well, they're approved for certain uses,
Okay.
but that doesn't even mean that they're being used for other uses, or that it's not legal to use them for
Okay.
other things. And a lot of drugs are like that. Like,
Sure.
they're labeled for one thing, like Viagra. It was originally supposed to be some kind of heart medication or something,
Right.
and it got turned into something else. But originally it wasn't labeled for
Because these guys who had
erectile
heart conditions
dysfunction,
were
yeah.
walking around with priapism, basically.
Right, yeah. It was just a side effect that they were like, okay, hey, this actually works for that, so let's use it for that.
Yeah, no. It's called off-label prescribing. I have
Exactly,
a friend,
off-label prescribing.
I have a friend who's prescribed what they call an antidepressant. It's almost never used, and he has trouble finding it at different pharmacies for his ADD because ADD medication doesn't work for him.
Sure.
And he said it was really hard to convince his doctor because he did all the research. He went to a doctor, he's like, hey, I need that. And the doctor was like,
So I think that's really cool that like somebody can research their own stuff and like go to a doctor and be like, I think I need this. And
He
the
is a-
doctor will actually be like, okay.
no, well, the doctor didn't say okay. It took a few times. It took a lot of convincing.
Well,
but this is a
eventually, yeah.
high-functioning individual.
Well, here's-
and anybody who would make the argument, like, there is no argument to make that it harms. It might not be the best. It might be giving him cancer, whatever. But from outside society, like, this is what objectively most people would say is a high-functioning individual who has a family and a business and.
Different episode, but I don't think you should have to go see a doctor to put whatever the hell you
I
want
don't
in your body,
either.
right?
I don't
Like,
either.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And on that topic there, like the guy knows himself better than any doctor ever would.
Damn right.
So like he's the one that should be able to say, I want this drug, give it to me.
I mean, the person who is more apt at experimenting and like getting the data is the person feeling
Exactly.
the data.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I understand
agree.
if it's a single proprietor that's selling a drug that doesn't want to give it to a person that they don't think necessarily needs it,
Oh, that's
right?
up to
Because,
them.
because
if they're going to be liable for something in the future. then-
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they could sell it to a person saying like at your own risk in a perfect world.
sure,
Right.
But as an industry, right? So now you're not just if you've got a medication and you want to go put it on the shelves out at Walmart and somebody wants to walk in and buy that medication, they don't need to consult anybody before they do that.
In a free world, if I was selling cannabis, and we lived in a free world, I wouldn't sell it to kids because I don't actually think it's a good idea for kids.
Yeah, mental frontal cortex, unless they've got seizures that are debilitating or Crohn's or something like that. It's
I'm
like,
talking about more the high THC stuff.
oh, okay, psychedelic. Yeah,
Like I wouldn't give that to kids. And
Okay.
I don't think any adult should have to ask permission from anybody.
Sure,
but as
yeah.
a business, I'd be like, hey,
Man.
we're a cool business. We just don't sell to
look at
kids.
this. We still all agree on most of this stuff. So I'm finding this actually very interesting so far.
I feel like we're going on a few tangents, and Steven might be annoyed by that.
No,
but-
this list is not as long. It's not as long as it looks.
All right, so I think we need to circle back into chemical castration. There's
Right.
a minimum of 30 different possibilities in terms of chemicals that can be introduced to block certain types of processes in terms of either, I don't know, let's just say hormones in
and then
in the
there's
body.
some
Well,
overlap.
that is all they do. They block hormones. That's the entire intent of
do they
these
raise
types of
do they
drugs.
raise other hormones?
No.
They just suppress some
they
hormones.
completely block the effects or lower the amount of hormones in the body.
Okay.
They can do either one. They can block them or they can lower them.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what they're meant to do, and that I wanted to define that term because chemical castration has a very negative connotation when it's used.
What is
because
the-
people think, they're literally making their bodies not function. Well, that's not.
That's not true.
It's not true. It's not true.
Would you guys? Quick question.
So what is the term you would use for people who are transitioning as opposed to sex offenders?
It's puberty blockers. That's what they call them.
Okay.
So-
I didn't know that.
Okay,
Oh.
and one thing that is associated with the idea of castration itself is that it's irreversible.
Right.
That's not true. Chemical.
So let's not call it chemical castration
Right.
anymore.
I
let's,
don't-
let's call it hormone blocking.
It's
like,
exactly.
It's puberty blockers is what they call it.
Right. Even in sex offenders though, like if they were to be taken off those drugs,
yeah, they go right back.
their libido would go right back to the way it was.
Okay.
Like everything would go right back to
and
the way
that's
it was.
and I don't
in
think
a
most
matter
people
of
understand that.
in like immediately, or would it take time? Or
You gotta
it
flush
takes-
the system,
well,
right?
or
it
if
takes
they're
a
on
few
those
weeks.
drugs
It
for
takes-
like decades, are we sure there's no irreversible consequences at some point?
After puberty, there is absolutely no way. There is no irreversible. I mean, you can go right. Like there are people who have used the drugs to
Even physically, like entertain me for a second. Because
we'll get into that. Part
Okay,
later.
okay.
But as far as like functioning goes, like bodily functioning goes,
yeah,
there are people who have fully socially or not socially, but fully medically transitioned without surgery, just through the use of drugs, that have come off the drugs and been able to have kids later.
sure.
So they are completely reversible as far as that goes.
Okay. When you say fully, what does that mean exactly?
So you go.
As
You
far
said
as
they
like
full-
as far as like fertility levels go
Okay.
or whatnot.
So they've gone down to effectively zero, not necessarily zero, but
or
effectively zero.
in your hormone levels go right back to where they're supposed to be.
So
Okay.
and I get into nuance because it's just the way my brain works.
We should rename the show Nuance.
Nuances. When a male takes these blockers, and a lot of them will sometimes develop breasts. Is that correct?
No, not just with the blockers.
No.
No, it causes
You have
gynecomastia or whatever, which can be an enlargement of the breast, but it's not.
Not the same.
It's not a full. It's not a. There's like 5 stages, I believe. Of
Okay.
Like puberty levels. They're called Tanner stages.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to take hormone blockers and you're a male, you might have enlargement of the breast, which would be like Tanner stage 2 out of 5.
Is that reversible?
It can be through exercise and stuff, and
Yeah, I mean,
it's not easy.
Leave it to a knuckle dragger to go right for the breast. I mean, I apologize, but I mean, when people say there's nothing, like I want to make sure that people understand there is nothing. If it can absolutely.
There's only one thing that could possibly be right now that they're looking at that could possibly be irreversible through these drugs.
Okay.
And that's bone density.
All right.
Okay, and that's one thing that when the kids are on the drugs, they're watching like a hawk.
Yeah.
Like they're doing tests like every 3 months to make sure that everything is on par where it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Especially with bone density because it can
No,
affect that.
yeah,
It can affect
absolutely,
that.
yeah.
Like obviously guys are going to have more dense bones than girls are.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the hips are formed and stuff. So if anything's off kilter, they'll stop if they have to get them back to where they need to be.
All right.
Yeah, from what I had looked up, the gynecomastia, which is enlargement of
The breast.
of breast tissue.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually further on unless you also introduce the
Estrogen.
Yeah, you have to get to that point before it gets to like Tanner stage 3.
Now, I'll tell you, if you ever spend any time around like guys that use steroids and all that kind of stuff, I mean, this is one of those things where they try to balance these type of things because of that reason, right? Because they quote unquote call them bitch tits, right? Like it's one of those things where when
Or moobs.
yeah,
Boobs. That's funny.
yeah. So yeah,
That's a funny word. I mean,
when they introduce steroids and they cycle through and all that fun stuff, what happens is the testosterone levels obviously spike, and then when they come off, your estrogen levels are
Yeah, they're going to go through the roof.
they're
because,
through the roof.
Yeah.
And your testosterone.
Testosterone actually is kind of like an estrogen blocker in itself.
Right.
And everyone has estrogen. Like you
Yeah.
have estrogen.
Yep.
Everyone's got estrogen. So but the testosterone just alone can block that.
Sure.
So if you take that away,
It's all receptors.
yeah.
Yeah.
so we're all females, just a testosterone. In
Well,
me
we're
is-
all both.
At a certain point, you were warm enough for a long enough time to become a male. All right, so we're We're moving.
Expect me to make more jokes about this, guys.
We're moving a little slow, but hey, the
Par for the course for this show.
the other point I had on this one topic itself is that these same drugs are also used to prevent cancer. Okay, not just to prevent cancer, but to help fight it.
Is it certain types of cancer specifically?
Yes, certain cancers that are receptive to hormone levels. So prostate cancer, breast cancer. These drugs, that's what they are actually. FDA
So if you got breast cancer, a hormone blocker would actually help you.
it would help
either
slow down
growth
that
or
process.
metastasization or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And it's not just cancer. There's other things like it's used for endometriosis and uterine fibroids, which I don't even know what that stuff is, but these drugs are used for other medical uses.
It's probably where they came about in the first place. I
Exactly.
imagine.
That's what they are FDA approved for. And then they just realized that, hey, this has other benefits that we can use them for.
Would say something labeling? What
Open label.
open label. Okay.
Right.
Open label prescribing.
So the whole point of that whole discussion was to use the term chemical castration because people are introducing these drugs into a body. You wouldn't call a cancer patient being chemically castrated.
No, you absolutely wouldn't.
So I don't want to call transgender kids being chemically castrated because they're taking the same drugs that a cancer patient is taking.
Yeah.
That's unfair.
Fair enough.
Okay. That was the whole point.
Man, I'm so easy.
Okay, so I've got a question there.
I will get to the argument on that later, though. I accept the definitions.
I accept the definitions. I just have, well, I don't accept it necessarily, but I don't know the answer to the next question.
Okay.
If you're using these drugs at a young age before the male genitalia, and I'm talking about males because I don't the
Testicles, testicles drop and all that fun stuff.
Before they're fully formed, would that have an irreversible effect later on?
And no, because
so if
you think about it, if say you're a female,
okay,
and you're blocking hormones and you're not growing breasts at age 12 or 13,
okay,
if you stop taking those drugs, you're still going to grow breasts like normal.
Okay, but we're talking
delayed.
So that I could understand, and then the breast there seems to be evidence that you can grow them later based on. But does the male genitalia work in the same way?
Why wouldn't it? It's a secondary sex characteristic that's affected by hormone levels.
Because
so it would have to.
When you say secondary, you mean like
secondary sex characteristics are like facial hair, breasts.
So developed
genitals,
developed during puberty.
Right.
Okay.
So the only conclusion I can come to in my head to play devil's advocate is that in terms of size, I know it's really, really funny. It would seem that if hormones could affect the size later on or at whatever stage, that this would be something that people would know about because size matters to some people apparently.
And I'm not one to say that people aren't using drugs like that to influence that later on in life. I don't know that they're not.
But I feel like I would have heard about it. Just because it's a funny subject that in every sitcom there's like wink winks about it and so forth. So and I've never heard about it. And I could be ill informed.
There are people though that are taking testosterone. Testosterone is a very highly controlled drug.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, it's
I thought you could just buy testosterone pills.
Oh no.
No.
Oh no.
Okay.
No.
Uninformed Banks over here.
No. I mean,
No.
when you look at things
It's
like
easier to get estrogen than it is to get testosterone.
You look at
you just buy
you look
some
at
soy.
HGH. You look at most types of anabolic like steroids and all that kind of stuff. They are really controlled.
There are lots of people out there who are taking testosterone to boost male features.
I didn't know it actually.
I don't
boosted
know about
size.
the genitals and how it affects that.
You want to get into conspiracy? I'll tell you right now that the fact that you can get estrogen a lot easier than you can get testosterone. Call me crazy, but a testosterone-rich country lends itself to being, I think, a little more. I don't say free. I want to say violent, almost in terms of.
Well,
violence could be bad though.
Yeah,
but I could see why. So,
but for the whole purpose,
of rebellion.
Yeah, exactly right.
I get it.
Yeah, and it's a well-known fact that testosterone causes more aggression than estrogen.
Absolutely,
obviously.
sure.
Like,
Yeah, nature nurture.
No one's doubting that.
I think it's just important to say that there's a balance where neither of the hormones are bad in of itself. Just like anything else good, if you abuse it, it can definitely do something that you wouldn't want. Because you wouldn't want violence. You would want the appropriate level of standing up for yourself and so forth.
Yeah. No, I think it's
I just don't want to demonize.
I
Like,
love conspiracy.
I don't want to demonize testosterone and like rebellion itself.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting topic though, Shane. Because why is it like why?
Well,
The powers that be, like, why are they more concerned about testosterone than
well, look at the
Because
education.
of that. I mean,
look
that
at the
seems
education system. You know, you take little boys, right? You take little boys who are in the education system, and a lot of them are doped. I mean, more so now than ever before, right? And it's because, you know, they get labeled in class as ADHD or ADD or something is wrong with them. It's nonsense. They're boys, right? Like when you're a little boy, you got an energy cell that just will not quit until you run out, and then 5 minutes later, after you have a snack, you're good again.
I think if you're a child, I think it is wholly abnormal to expect to be put in a chair and to be quiet for 8 hours a day.
Oh,
None of us, neither of us three, or anybody listening to this podcast would be okay to non-voluntarily be told to sit down and not say words for that long a period.
I never was okay with that.
I was never okay with it either.
No,
but,
and I mean,
but it's abnormal, and you're going to have consequences that are averse to what you want. If what you want is for kids to be that quiet and I don't know, obedient.
There was actually not a bad book back in the day. I think it was the war on boys, the war on something like that, and it's about the emasculation effort, especially concerted in the government indoctrination system on little boys for that reason. I mean, you don't want little boys that grow up to be rebellious. You don't. You want these guys to comply. You want them to grow up, get a job, work until they die, and that's it.
Well, they think rebellion is intrinsically wrong when rebellion against the wrong things is like the most virtuous thing that you can possibly have.
Yeah, we're going down another rabbit hole.
Yeah, we are.
But I
was just letting you guys go for a minute.
I definitely think it's very interesting.
And I don't necessarily disagree with all that stuff. Like
Sure.
I do think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of the higher power that do stuff like. Obviously, the public indoctrination system has been geared towards doing a lot of things like that. So.
I will give you a little personal anecdote. Right when I went into the Marine Corps, and there weren't girls around, and you had dudes in charge, like really, really masculine dudes in charge of you 24/7, without the distraction of girls. In those years, I learned more in those short years about practical application and science and you name it than I ever did in the 15 years that you spend in public education, 13 years you spend in public education. Way more. Unfathomably more about this world than I ever did in the other sense. You know, and I think it's because they have channeled into something so completely opposite of what government indoctrination is. We're going to take these guys and we have to get them not only indoctrinated but educated and schooled in a certain way that lends them to really learning. And it's a proven thing, and you learn one, do one, show one, and it's application. It's application every time in school. When do you ever use application in school?
Right, of course.
It's all theory.
You're saying that's in the military?
Yeah.
Of course they have the best interest to do that because they want to protect their property. So they have to do that.
They do. And it reveals
it's like
itself.
a farmer.
Yeah,
it's
I
like
agree
a
with
farmer
Steven there.
wants to make sure that their cows are like the best possible healthy cows they can possibly get. So of course they have a really vested interest in making that.
But they've
environment.
unwittingly exposed themselves in terms of, why don't you do this over here? Because you can't do this for an entire population, or the entire population would sit there and give you the middle finger and say, you can't govern me.
I'm not sure exactly.
No,
I mean,
and
the
you
military
have no choice at that point because you've signed your life away.
Yeah, you've surrendered your rights.
Right.
Sure.
Okay, so that was enough of that tangent. Let's get off of that.
Yeah.
I want to go on to the next topic, which
ahead.
is it stems from the term chemical castration, which that term is being tossed around by a group of people that I want to identify that you guys probably have no idea are even out there or that they even exist. I don't know if you've heard the term TERF.
What does that stand for?
TURF or TERF?
TERF.
Okay.
Okay, that stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist.
I have heard the term. I don't know exactly what it stands for, though.
Trans-exclusionary. Okay.
Right.
Oh, is that like the there's a few examples. It's there's a professor in Canada who calls herself a TERF. She was recently on, I think, the Michael Malice show.
What's her name?
I wish I remember the name. So it's feminists who have been in the movement for a long time.
They're not feminists. They claim that they're feminists, and they claim they're radical feminists.
So the new ones or the old ones?
So TERF is a slur
The
word.
TERFs. These are they're not even feminists.
These are new?
They're pretty recent, yeah.
So TERF is a slur word.
No, because some of them claim that. It's not necessary.
TERF is a pejorative word to say that somebody is pretending to be pro equality and unity, and they're not really.
Oh, they're absolutely not. Really.
Well,
Okay.
I think I've actually heard them called fainting couch feminist. Is that?
I've never heard that term. No.
Fainting couch. They're just absolutely offended by every little.
No,
thing
that's not
possible.
what we're talking about. So
I think
we're talking about people who
Okay,
used to call themselves feminists, but who now are saying
No,
that
no. They still call themselves feminists.
okay, they still call themselves feminist, but they're saying that the trans people don't belong within the feminist movement
because they're offensive
the
to women.
equality movement, etc.
Yeah, their whole thing is that. Okay,
We are broaching some new territory.
we are, and this is really what I want
for a new audience.
This is part of what I wanted to get into because it's not a term that a lot of people are familiar with unless you're in the trans community or the LGBT community. A lot of lesbian and gays are aware of it, but their entire goal is to pretty much just attack trans people. Like they don't care about feminism at all. Like I don't have a problem with like certain aspects of feminism. Obviously, I think people should be equal. So women who work towards that goal, fine, call yourself a feminist. That's great. I agree with that. I think it's great, you know. But these people are not even that. Like their entire life is spent posting articles and making websites based on anti-trans propaganda. That's it.
So they're feminists that are anti-trans.
They're just
no matter what.
They're just anti-trans people. They don't care about anything about feminism. Like they don't speak about feminism at all. Like they don't speak about women's issues at all.
It's just basically anti-trans.
They're just an anti-trans group
of,
that claim
of
that
women.
They're claiming that they're feminists so that they can recruit from feminists.
Well, they're also claiming that they're feminists. I wish I remembered her name because they called themselves and still call themselves feminists before, because the feminist movement is a little bit more established than the LGBT movement. Would you agree on that?
No, not necessarily.
In popular culture, the feminist movement is more known by most people than the LGBT movement, especially 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, okay. The feminist movement has had more of a longer time to establish itself.
Yeah.
And was more known by more people, especially a long time ago. Now it's about it was probably equal. So these are people who still consider themselves feminists.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around,
at least in name only.
You know, like, and I don't like doing this, but in terms of, you know, where these people are politically, it sounds like if they're feminists who are just strictly out to say no trans, no time, not ever, not now, whenever.
That's what they are.
It sounds like a bunch of damn, you know, really right in terms of politically.
Okay, so her name is Christina Hoff Sommers. Are you aware of that name?
I have heard that name.
Yeah,
Okay.
so politically right type of women.
Posey Parker is another one. Look her up. She's huge, like all over the place right now. But I don't even like naming them. But
no,
I just wanted you to have a little bit of information background.
Sounds like they're almost politically right in terms of conservative type people for the most part that are trying to recruit.
They are. I would consider extreme right wing.
Right wing.
Yeah.
Now, are they trying to also recruit then quote unquote feminist from the left wing?
They're trying to form a coalition
of female.
They're trying to form a coalition between lesbians and right wing conservatives.
Yeah. Okay. So,
hey, you know, if you can manage that.
Okay.
Well, I don't. Well, it depends on your definition of right wing, because I don't see how it would be impossible whatsoever for people of different sexualities to believe in the free market, not going to war, and so forth, which is what the good that I see on the right wing.
It's Christian conservatives.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's very different than right wing, because on the right wing you've got, I mean, you've got the things that I would advocate
Right,
for.
no,
the
they're
reason that I'm in
specifically
the
targeting
Republican
evangelical
Party.
Christian conservatives
Yeah.
and trying to combine that with the lesbian community who are angry that people are transitioning into females.
So
Yeah.
they're the ones who came up with that term or who use
They're
that
the
term.
ones who have spread it around a lot, yeah.
Okay.
Because it does have a negative connotation, and it's really easy to like evoke emotions out of people using that term.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So anyways, the term itself, TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist, that's what's actually scary. Like that these people are on a mission. Like that scares me more than.
So when we talk about these people, are they trying to enact legislation? Then?
Yes.
That's the scary
Yes.
part.
What is the legislation? Because
Jenny, you guys know what the legislation is. They've just introduced, I think, 4 or 5 now.
In different
this
states?
year, they've pre-introduced them. Like they're gearing up right now to introduce these. And we know Jenny Earhart, or is that Jenny Earhart?
Yeah.
I think that's her name.
in Georgia,
Yeah, she's one of them.
Stuart Jones in South Carolina,
Right. So there was. I think the South Carolina was the most recent one.
I believe so.
But yeah,
Stuart Jones has actually been on this podcast.
Quite a few times.
it is a predetermined plan that they're doing to introduce this legislation, and I don't know what the exact outcome that they're looking for is, but it is not protecting children.
When you say they, who are you referencing exactly?
The people who have aligned with Jenny Earhart and whoever, the people who have aligned with TERFs to, when any legislation is introduced to about a house, there is a group of people sitting around going, "Hey, let's make this legislation for this reason."
You don't think there's ever a representative who comes up with the idea just on their own?
Well, it's
and just introduces it on their own?
it's like we said before, right? Like there may be somebody who it's potentially, right? Is it potential that you could have?
I'm not that naive.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think this is
There is always even if it's you and Charles Gregory, there is always a group of people backing you up, going, "We want this legislation."
Yeah.
Don't expose the Liberty conspiracy, dude.
It's just
Stop it.
reality.
Yeah,
man.
Well,
That's
sure.
just-
Well, that.
so you
But
got
that then is not necessarily a conspiracy because people talk because that's the nature of human interaction.
right. We're
is we
grouping together
communicate.
to all try to pass some bill of something that we believe in.
But
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that every single of these bills, like the Jenny
No.
Earhart bill and the Stuart Jones bill, are necessarily coordinated, or
they are absolutely
if they're
coordinated.
not coordinated, have the same people behind it.
I believe they do.
Okay.
well. I mean, let's
Because
just
it's just not coincidence that they're all 4 pre-introduced before next year's legislation has already started. That they are gearing up for something.
Right.
So I think gearing up happens and coordination happens. I know that if I could, I would have constitutional carry dropped the same time by all representatives in 50 states at the same time. I do the same with the Protect the Guard bill. By the way, Protect the Guard bill. Be on the lookout. It's going to happen.
it's coming.
But I would bet a ton of money that not every bill that hits like a subject that is in the media a lot, constitutional carry, this one, I don't know what it would be called, the Child No Transitioning Act of some sort. I don't think they're all coordinated. at
So
all.
I totally believe that.
Let-
I think if
It-
I did
it's
enough
fair.
research, I could probably even find evidence of that. I didn't do that, but
I don't agree, but I see the reasons why you would put them on a board.
they
with the
just
red
all came
dots.
out like in the same week.
So I just want to back up and for the listeners also is sit here and really understand the objective of TERF. TERF, what we think one way or another, coordinated approach in terms of legislation. Is this for just transitioning adults, or does this also include kids?
It is only for kids.
It's only for kids.
It's only for kids.
Okay.
And the TERFs are more of the academics. The representatives would be the pawns of the TERFs.
Okay.
From what I understand, is that fair?
What? Say that again.
The TERFs would be the movement that pre-existed, and it's more academics and activists, and the state representatives would just be their pawns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how it's. Yeah. That's
Okay,
That's
so-
how I see it.
So,
Okay.
and as dubious as people who are these TERF people, right? As dubious as their intentions might be towards the adult trans community, can't necessarily assume that is saying
They are actual TERFs. They're more. They have lean. They started off against all trans people, but they have really started gearing into more just focusing on children because it's a very emotional.
Okay, so
you think that's strategic and they have an ulterior motive?
Yeah, they've gained more traction that way, so they're of course focusing.
Okay,
and from what I've seen and the interview on Michael Malice, and I think she was also on Tom Wood's show actually, because they like to have some conspiratorial people on, and I think they do not just have that agenda. I think there is more. To
I think we're moving into the meat and
would
potatoes of the conversation now. Okay. And I want to make sure that we're talking about this and getting to it because we're at 54 minutes already.
Wow.
Yeah, we definitely move
so
on, because I want to get to Jenny Earhart's bill.
So this movement, and stop me or tell me, do you want to move through? Because it sounds kind of to me like maybe there's a disagreement in terms of what we said on the podcast with kids transitioning. Transitioning, yeah. I'm trying to remember our definitions here. Transitioning versus anything else like that. That sounds like the.
Hold on.
What we could do is go through all the points and
sure.
then continue to have the conversation based on those points.
I have a very important question. Is another one of those up for drinking?
Okay.
Thank you.
One thing
Cheers.
I kind of want to still tie all this together. The story. I want to briefly talk about the story that you guys did
out of Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the this is what I had a problem with when I said you guys were spreading misinformation is that you said that the mother wants to introduce these chemicals to the child.
That's what I read in the story.
That is not true.
Okay, so what is the truth?
The truth is she wants to socially transition. We talked about social transition versus medical transition. The mother, this is a he said, she said situation.
Sure.
And there are two sides to this story.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are only hearing one side of it.
Yeah. So I'm open.
She's claiming that she just wants to socially transition the child, allow the kid to pick their own name, wear feminine clothes to school, grow their hair out long. The father is dead set against that. He will not he cuts the kid's hair against the mother's wishes, yeah. And against the child's wishes, according to the mother. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know either one of them. So I don't know who's telling the truth.
Sure.
But there are reports that the father is just absolutely dead set against any kind of social transition whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It's not about medical. She does not want to introduce chemicals into the kid's body. The entire episode that you guys did was based on the misconception that you thought she was actually trying to do this. She's not.
Yeah, agreed.
I thought I had read that she wanted to medically transition him using puberty blockers.
No, the child is 7 years old. 7-year-olds don't go through puberty.
No, I know. Trust me.
Why would you need to introduce chemicals into a 7-year-old child when they don't have hormones?
But that's
okay. So, have there been children who have transitioned?
What do you mean?
In history,
so
who have medically transitioned? I'm sorry, I should use
not socially. Medically,
yeah, of course there.
Okay, so at what age does that start? I'm just trying to inform myself now.
8, 9, 10.
What age does puberty start?
Depends.
Well, I'm
9 to 11.
I don't know if it starts at puberty or not. Like I really just don't know about the subject. So is it? I'll completely confess to having gotten something wrong if I got it wrong.
Absolutely.
So are you saying that it's never been discussed? Or is there any legitimacy to the father potentially being worried that would happen once puberty would start, which is not that far off?
Well, the father is absolutely concerned that the kid will be put on puberty blockers at some point.
Do you think that is a fair concern or not? I guess is my question.
I do think it's a fair concern.
Okay.
The problem that I have a problem with is the misinformation that is being spread around that she's attempting to do that now at 7 years old.
Okay.
That is not true.
I'll confess to having gotten that completely wrong.
In this case, if we got it wrong, hey, we apologize. And
it's not you that got it wrong. It's actually the source.
Yeah, I saw reporting that it was medical transition in terms of puberty blockers being introduced to this child's body.
Right, and that was the source of the information. You got it from LifeSite News, which I also have point number 4.
Okay.
It's very biased. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
I mean, I could read the bias within the lines.
And they've actually. I don't mind getting off on this right now because they've been proven to like tell some absolutely false things. They just recently did a story about a week or two ago about 6,000 people dying from taking hormone blockers.
Well, I would assume they get a lot wrong because every media, including us, which we've just proven, and we've said it a few times in the past. I got something wrong about Shane's state rep once. Who's your state rep again?
Gilligan.
Yeah, I said that she hadn't co-sponsored a bill when she wasn't even in the state house yet. Yeah.
Yeah, and trust me, we're happy to admit mistakes. I mean, that's easily done. So I want to get through your list here. It brings you to the next point in terms of, LifeSite News is not accurate. We're fine with that, and I think there is probably a large. I mean, they're probably on the other side of it because they're probably activists. I think there is just a giant hole in terms of understanding all of this because people don't sit down like this. Even in our communities, which are very counterculture, there is not a great understanding of this because there isn't information. There isn't sit downs like this where people actually have these conversations.
Right.
So providing the service to not only our audience but anybody out there that you guys want to spread this with, I think this does a great service in terms of getting out real understanding.
Yeah.
So please bring me to the next point.
Okay. So the next point, which I just wanted to agree with Banks, that I do believe in this particular court case that both parents should have joint custody, regardless of whether they agree on the treatments. Because you have two different types of treatments. You have what they call gender affirming treatment, and you have conversion therapy.
Those are the medical ones, or the conversion would be social, I guess.
No. They're just two. They're just two types of.
Can you define them?
They're two schools of thought on how to treat people with transgender issues.
Okay, one which is pro, and one
is to say, hey, let's let them do what they want. Let's let them wear their hair the way they want to, wear the clothes they want to. And the other says, no, because that's just encouraging it. We need to stay. You are a boy. You are a girl. This is the way boys and girls dress, and you have to do that, or else you might turn out to be something else later on.
Okay.
So and I got to ask, in a day and age where genetic typing is really pretty common, you can do it for $100, no problem. What are we doing speculating? That's my question. What are we speculating about? If they're not XX or XY, why don't we just because
we're talking about gender. We're
talking about gender, not sex, right?
But genetically, here's the thing: is if it's XY or it's XX, you really don't fit into the outlier where this type of thing occurs.
Well, we're still talking about gender, but so Shane is saying that probably So you'll tell me if I'm wrong. Shane is saying it seems like it would be a safer, more reasonable thing to do to go to the default of what you are sexually, gender-wise, until you're an adult.
No. What I'm saying is we live in an age where the technology is cheaply available to genetically test people. And if you're not in that fraction of a percent that doesn't fit the XX or the XY, we need to know that.
Again, we're talking about gender,
but we're not trying to change gender. What we're trying to do
is they're trying to change
we're
gender.
Trying to transit. Yeah, well,
or
no,
they're trying to adapt. They're trying to adapt to the gender that is
sex.
Real.
We're that fraction of a percent, and maybe I misunderstand because I know an XX or an XY who is genetically an XX or an XY can act either female or male. Either way, it doesn't bother anybody in society.
Well, it does, but whatever.
Well, no, I mean not, but it doesn't. I should say it doesn't harm. Okay,
that's correct.
We don't harm anybody, right? When we let people be whatever gender they want to be as an XXXY, doesn't matter either way.
So I think I agree with you. I just don't think the parents disagree on what the XY in this case is. I think
what I'm saying is why are we speculating?
But they're not speculating. Both parents agree that their child is an XY. One parent wants to do the conversion thing. One parent wants to do the I'm sorry, I don't remember the term.
Conversion therapy.
Well, the conversion therapy on one side and the other therapy on the other side, or the other approach on the other side.
Gender affirming.
The gender affirming one. So they both agree that the child is XY. I don't know if they've done the specific test. They just disagree on what to do with this XY.
They don't test your chromosomes because that has absolutely nothing to do with your gender.
But potentially we could speculate that it's probably XY because in most cases it is XY.
Well, and here's the other thing.
Okay, wait. There's another.
It just seems like a weird tangent to me.
It is because it's not about your chromosomes, and there's actually 10 different reasons. I don't have it with me. I don't even want to look it up. But there's 10 different reasons that a specific doctor in Michigan has come up with that might cause people to be transgender. So it doesn't have anything to do with your chromosome, but it could have a lot to do with like brain development in the womb.
Yeah.
Like a lot of different things can contribute to being transgender.
What I'm saying, and I
there's
guess
no way to.
I'm not communicating effectively. So, and I need to go back and say, if we just go ahead and genetically test, right? Genetically test for XXXY. If you don't fit into those, and we understand that you are in that very small percentage, then we get to look at this from a different lens.
Well, we could do that. We could do that, but there's also other tests that could be run.
I don't disagree.
And I don't disagree that we shouldn't be running these tests.
Yeah.
But I also right now those tests have not been run. There's not been enough research, and it takes more than just one test on one person.
I don't disagree with that at all.
It takes decades of research stacked on top of each other before there's a consensus in the medical community.
And there won't ever be.
And right now, all we have is the decades and decades and decades of research that has been done.
Okay.
And there has been decades and decades of research done on the topic. And it started. This is an interesting point I want to bring up before we're out of time.
Yeah.
There was a clinic in Germany, the first clinic of its kind to actually start looking at this information. By Dr. Hirschfeld, and the Nazis actually burned it down.
Really?
Yeah. And the famous
Nazis
picture
burnt a lot down.
Well,
oh god.
the most famous picture that you see of Nazis burning books is from Dr. Hirschfeld's clinic in Germany. And there's actually a picture of him in the picture, like it's a figure from his office.
Huh.
So, yes, there have been decades and decades of research on this.
Suppressed, obviously.
A lot of it has been, yeah, of course, because a lot of research was lost on that. But this is something that doctors and scientists have been studying for a long time, and we are only going based off what knowledge we have.
Sure.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't do more testing and we shouldn't try to figure out more things. That is absolutely what we need to do.
It would just be at the top of my list. You know, if I'm thinking about this as a parent, right, and I've got a kid that's like, hey man, I'm a girl, you know, as a boy that I perceive as obviously a boy. All right, hey, you know what? I'm one of those people that I want to know first and foremost, do you fit the 99+ % that you are XX or XY?
Probably.
I want to know that. If I do the testing and I know,
I would think that would be the first thing you would want to know.
I know categorically if I test them and they're not XX or XY, we are dealing with a special case.
Yeah.
Right?
But in most cases, people are going to be dealing with the common case.
But hey, that's the thing is, as soon as you get to that special case, you go, this is a special case.
Yeah, of course.
And I think
now where do we go from here?
Yes.
Right.
And we can all, I think most people can agree, hey, listen, we've started the testing. These people right here, these people are different. And I don't mean that in like every individual is different. What I mean is we need to look
They're outside the norm.
We need to give
Which
this
is
a
fine.
secondary look.
That's fine to say like people are outside the norm because that there are statistical differences,
Yes.
obviously.
Yeah.
So people are going to always be outside that.
So what I'm saying is I think it gives it credence to sit there and say, we did this, definitely this person, definitely this person, and definitely this person. Now, these people who are over here don't fit into that category. However, whatever their psychology or social transitioning or whatever it is also not like the 99.9% of you guys. It's still somewhat, analogous to this set over here, which is different, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of what you're saying has actually already been done. Like you just don't realize that like this research has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, I just don't think people do it. I don't think.
Well, no, you just haven't seen it, but it has been going on for a long time.
What I'm saying is I don't think most people approach especially the child thing like this. They're specific children,
doubt
or am I wrong?
No, professionals are absolutely approaching the children like that. They
Okay.
absolutely are because they've been trained to do that. Like they have research. The only people that are dealing with transgender children and diagnosing what's called gender dysphoria, they have been trained in this. Like they have gone through the research that has been done over the last.
They do it with this kid
century.
in Texas.
Absolutely, they did. Yeah, they absolutely
did. They did the gender testing and all that. I mean,
the sex.
I don't know about chromosome.
I'm sorry. Yes,
I don't know about chromosome testing, but yes, they absolutely. This kid in Texas actually went through therapy with a trained doctor, therapist, a whole group of people. Like
geneticist.
Why does that matter?
Well, that just gets
He's
my
talking
first
about
question.
the XY and
I'm talking about trained therapists, trained doctors, trained pediatricians, I mean, his mom is a pediatrician.
No, I understand.
Well, I mean, that would so we that could lead to a conversation forever because we just can't just trust people or their opinions just because they're trained.
Right.
My mom is also a doctor, and I wouldn't trust her on many opinions.
There are many people involved in the research, the recommended therapy solutions for each individual kid, and there are standards of care that have been established, over time.
I still think it's good,
and they're being followed.
Okay.
They are being followed.
I still think it would help somebody who is more on the normal side, and I say that as their outlook, not themselves. Like their outlook is more just part of the norm. It would help them to potentially not hear the extremist view from the other side that, well, all these people there are crazy, and see, oh, there is something, there's a delineation of logic that you can use, and one of the first points would be to, well, let's just see if they're part of the sexually part or genetically part of these outliers, and that would help. I think that would help a lot of people come to a more reasonable approach.
I agree.
If the line of logic is followed, and I doubt many people even think about, oh, is there a line of logic to go down? Like, are they just jumping to conclusions, or
no,
are
there
they
is
going
absolutely
down to
there is
things?
absolutely a ton of research that has been done. It's not well known.
Well, saying just
unless you
research
need-
doesn't help as much as being able to say something specific, and it's something small because it's a very small outlier, and it's something that's pretty, like, I've done it a few times. Be like, hey, most of the time it's just going to be X, Y, or XX, so there's no reason to talk about it. But I think just talking about it would help those two groups, especially the very, very opposites, potentially have a little bit more respect for each other.
What do you mean?
To talk about the fact that, hey, the first thing to do is maybe to do a genetic test about the specific chromosomes.
Well, I mean, that would have to be up to anyone that's concerned with the issue, and not just people that don't have any skin in the game.
I'm not saying to force it, but it just helps me be like, hey, that seems like a reasonable first step to take.
It's deduction.
That's all. Yeah.
I mean, it's deduction at a certain point.
Right, but I'm not going to sit here and talk about how I feel like cancer treatment patients should have to go through certain tests before they're allowed treatment.
I'm not saying
I'm not a cancer patient, and I don't know anyone that's a cancer.
Sure, but I could have an opinion on a cancer patient. I would have an even stronger opinion if it was somebody in my family, and I would hope that they would do, like, there's some things that I would think they would do first and be like, hey, can we see the cancer? Okay, we can't see it on the outside. Let's look on the inside. Like, that would be things that would make me trust the doctor a little bit more if he said, "Hey, we're going to look on the outside."
Yeah, because
then we're going to take off clothes and look on.
In this day and age where doctors get paid for chemo and crap like that,
yeah, that would make me have more trust. And so, if we're talking about this whole conversation being quite controversial between different parties, especially extreme parties,
especially with kids,
the evangelical Christians, or at least some of them, and then the TERFs and evangelical Christians, and then the LGBT community on the other, that would be a good way to bring people together to some degree.
I think so.
Right, but the problem is we don't even need to bring people together on the issue. We just have to agree that, like, it's none of the government's business whatsoever, because
I agree with
this is
that,
a decision
but I
between
do think
kids,
it's very
therapists, doctors. It doesn't have anything to do with the government.
I don't mean to talk over you, but I think that's true, but I think it's very, very helpful in general. And if we live in a free society, it will be even more important to have consensuses, or try to make consensuses and have people talk about it and bring people together. I think that's
I think in the future,
how a free world would work.
We need to do that, but that's a long discussion, and we've gone on for an hour and a half, and haven't even gotten to all my points.
113.
We'll both shut up if you want. If
Go ahead.
I'm just saying. Okay, listen. There are so many aspects of this that you cannot even, unless you do hours and hours and hours of research, like, you cannot make a decision one way or the other what's best medically or what's best therapeutically.
I think medically it is completely objective that medically that is the one of the smartest things to do first.
What?
To test
genetically
chromosomes. That's
genetic testing.
I think that's pretty objective. I would bet a lot of money that would be the truth, part of the truth.
Okay. What would that accomplish? If you were to figure out
when you're doing deduction and you're trying to rule things out.
Hold on. Let me just put a scenario in front of you. Let's say we did a chromosome test, and it turns out you actually have chromosomes of your sex.
Then you just move on to
you're
the
not
other
allowed
factors.
You're not allowed to transition.
No.
That's not what I'm saying.
We're just saying. Listen, either you fit here, right? Which we're dealing with a different case than XXXY, or we're not. Now what we need to do is now understand differently XXXY.
It's good information is all I'm saying.
I-
It's good, easy
it's a
information
data
to
point.
access.
It's
I'm sure they have data points like this. I'm
not saying they don't. I'm just saying that that's a smart thing.
case by case.
And if
And the
people
thing is, like, not all people who go through therapy for or even medical transition even want to. They don't have any desire to know why they're the way they are.
Sure,
Or,
but
like,
but if it's okay, so we're working under a premise. If it's kids in a situation where the two people who have their rights in escrow disagree, seems like all the bases should be covered, and that is like a basic base. Bleh.
So
I don't understand why you're pushing back so much on something that's so non-controversial to me. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
because it's not necessary. It's not necessary to the conversation.
so
in this instance where there are two parents, like I'll just repeat myself. I think it is. I think it's a smart thing. I can't prove it 100%,
I mean,
but I think it's a smart thing.
for the sake of argument, if we're looking at like a court case where you have a jury who's put together to make a decision for the parents because they can't come to one on their own, right? Yes, that's fine.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, that's a starting point. I
And in
guess,
general,
for-
if it was a sibling of
when you're
mine or a
trying to-
friend of mine, that would also seem like what I probably wouldn't give advice because I don't know what I'm talking about exactly. But it seems like something that if they beg me for advice, I would give.
I wasn't in the courtroom, so I have no idea what they talked about.
Sure.
Like, I'm not.
We're all speculating.
Yeah, there's really no point in going on about that.
well, I mean, but we can get into just what adults do with adult bodies under their own care and supervision and
Or lack of care and lack of supervision.
I don't think this audience, and I don't think the majority of rational people out there are going to object, right?
Most people aren't.
I don't think so. I think the controversial part is kids.
It's the kids.
It's
Right.
kids. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the kid part of this because
Okay.
that was where I was very passionate about what a parent has a right to do to a child.
Right. Okay. So we'll get in a little bit briefly about that. You guys mentioned at one point in the show that there's no consequences for not taking hormone blockers. Like if you don't take them and just progress naturally through life, there's no consequence.
Well,
That's not true. I mean, if a kid has been saying since the age of 7 that they are the other gender and want to transition, and you force them to go through natural puberty, they are going to have body changes that they're going to have to reverse later on in life that are expensive, painful.
What are these changes?
Expand for me because
What are the body changes specifically? Whoa.
Well, I mean, natural puberty. Like what happens to boys in natural puberty? They grow facial hair.
sure.
So specifically, you're saying that if a biological sexual boy is forced to stay as he is, later on the consequences will be having to get rid of body hair, having to get rid of a more square physique. I don't know how best to say it.
Yeah, there's actually facial changes that could be
Like
really hard to reverse. Like
a straighter jawline. And
yeah,
things like that.
yeah. I mean, they're not irreversible through surgery and technology, but they are really difficult and painful and expensive to go through. So that's one thing that they're just trying to avoid. You know?
But
And for females, let's go with the females too.
Okay.
Like, they're gonna grow breasts,
Yeah.
and you can always get rid of breasts. Like their surgery
it's
now,
difficult and painful.
It's painful.
And,
It's
and
expensive.
it's risky.
It leaves scars.
Yeah, it's risky. I mean,
So that's what they're trying to do is when they have the best interest of the child at heart, they are just trying to avoid these possible things
When they
that
potentially
might
have the best
happen.
interest of the child at heart.
And what they're doing is they are, according to all the research that we have and data available that we have right now, they are not introducing any chemical that's going to change them one way or the other.
Okay,
What they're doing is keeping them right in the middle.
Okay, but you're assuming.
but that's also a change.
No, but
It's not a change.
you're assuming though that the predilection, because I'm not trying to say that it's a choice. I have no problem with people having a discussion on that, but I don't want to, and I don't think it's necessary. That the predilection is going to be followed through with 100% of the time.
Well,
when
yeah,
we have proof that there are some people who not only at the stage of wondering, because there is people who like wonder, right? I'm not being disrespectful. I don't think sane people are like unsure, right? They go through a period of like figuring themselves out, like we figured ourselves out, right? So there's people who wonder. There are even people who have later in life with full cognition. I assume maybe they bumped their head at some point. Who knows? But with full cognition, have transitioned and then regretted it and gone back.
Right.
So assuming that there is going to be harm because you don't let that state of mind go through later on, you've completely like pushed away the fact that potentially that state of mind would have changed, would have not been correctly realized at the moment, etc. So I think that's one-sided. I think it's probably impossible to say which course is the right course in. Anyways.
I agree.
So
it is completely impossible for me to sit here and say which course is right for anyone.
For anybody, anybody.
So
even if it was our own child, it'd probably be impossible.
So
exactly.
Correct?
It is.
With this agreement.
I'm glad we agree on that.
So my question is why do you interrupt a natural process? If we're in agreement on
I have
that.
an answer for that. I have an answer for that because it's medicine. And medicine is, and the study of medicine is
It's practice,
weighing
right?
the pros and cons, right? Okay.
Well, medicine is also counteracting all the natural things in the world. Like cancer is
Yeah,
natural.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It is
So-
counteracting like infections,
Sure.
which will kill you.
And Stephen made the point that I hadn't thought about, that there are consequences to letting, in this case, nature, and I put it in quotations because nature isn't necessarily
not always good.
Go forward. I happen to disagree in this circumstance, but yeah, nature isn't intrinsically
For
good.
yourself, you disagree, of course, naturally, because you only have that one perspective.
So for myself, yes, but in general, it seems like the safer thing if I were to be the insurer of people's happiness, which I am.
But you are not.
Definitely not.
Thank God.
No, I was making no. I was never making the point that I am. But if I was to be the insurer of people's happiness,
Thank God none of us are.
that statement was a little strong because I can make my cat happy. But if I was to ensure, it seems like I would say, hey, these consequences and its whole thing of consequences outweigh these other consequences.
Okay.
Right, and
That's all.
it's a personal
For
decision.
a limited amount of
It is
time.
a personal decision that we all have to make, and you don't have any trans kids. Hopefully, you don't have any trans kids.
my kids
I
think
have no kids. Hopefully,
Here's the thing: is my kids think they're damn dinosaurs sometimes.
My daughter thinks she's a cat.
And that's the thing is,
I always like your daughter.
have you guys? And I want to bring up this tangent very quickly. Is there are pathogens in this world that psychologically affect people that nobody even knows about? Cats carry pathogens that make people freaking crazy. Like cat ladies and things. This is a proven fact.
Oh no, and actually this is interesting because that's actually one of the theories that brings up why are people transgender? Is it because of like pesticides that we've put in the
Barium,
environment?
aluminum.
That is actually a
The
theory.
frogs.
Yeah,
Fluoride.
turning the frogs gay.
No, I'm not saying that this
Hey,
is 100%.
If we're not careful, Steven Johnson is going to be called a turf. I don't want that to happen.
Nah, this is we're an hour 22 already, man.
I
And
want to finish this if everybody's comfortable finishing
I
it, because
don't-
I know we've
I'm good.
yeah, I'm good too, man. And I don't want to rush this because
Hold on. Let me
I
just
think
make
this
sure.
I think this is an extremely healthy debate.
Do you guys mind if I use the restroom?
No, man.
I've never done this on a podcast.
Help
but
yourself. Me and Steven, we're gonna continue.
Oh
to,
wait, there's one more point that I did want to make, and Banks, I need you to hold on.
Well, hey, let's talk about this beer for a second while Banks is out of the room.
All right.
What do you normally get into in terms of beer? And sorry for the audience for
I actually brewed beer for.
You do?
I had a little brew club.
What's it called?
Just brew club.
Brew Club? Yeah, local.
Yeah, it's local.
Yeah.
I brewed. It was about this time, about 5 years ago.
Is it when you got into it?
Yeah, I believe it was the first year, and we had a pretty nice setup. We could do. I think. What is a keg? Like, what size is a keg of beer?
God, I think it's like something
Is it
like
10 gallons.
No. A keg is more like 50, I think.
Is it really?
50 gallons.
Okay, well, we had an entire keg that we had turned into a brew pot,
Yeah.
and we were all trying different recipes, and I came up with one that was called reindeer pea. That's what I named it. But it was a wheat beer, and I infused
Like a
it.
Hefeweizen?
Yeah, kind of like that. But
Yeah.
but like, yeah, I would say that closer to that.
Yeah.
But I had infused it with candy canes, so it had a candy cane aftertaste.
Cool.
And we called it reindeer beer. And it was the most popular beer at the Christmas party that
That's
year,
pretty
for
cool.
Sure. Like that keg went before
Everything
before
else
anything
just
else.
floated it, huh?
I'm really sorry about that.
No, it's cool, man.
145 episodes.
The fact that you're back already, boy, did you even go? I mean, you must have really had to pee.
Let's not make this too graphic.
We're talking about fallacy.
Okay. Oh, yeah. The one point I wanted to make, that one of the things I heard you guys talk about in the show was age of consent and emancipation.
Okay.
You talked about that. It turns out, I did a little bit of research on that, and it turns out the age of emancipation in Georgia is 16. But I personally know people that were emancipated at 15, so I don't know how that works. Like,
maybe they got the paperwork in early in anticipation.
Maybe the laws has changed since then.
I think what most laws are, and it differs by state probably and by country, is that there is a fast track age of emancipation, which is usually I think around 16, and then emancipation on itself. So I actually know this by personal experience. When my parents got divorced, there was legal custody battles and so forth.
Yeah.
And one of them made an argument, and I was 17 at the time, and the federal judge at that point said that since I was under the category of a certain state, I had automatic emancipation. So I could go through the process, but automatically they would defer to my opinion.
They automatically emancipate you at 18 in Georgia, but that might be different.
It's 17 in a different state.
Right.
I just don't want to mention the state at this point. And so I think on most cases, though, if it's less than that, it's a case-by-case basis, just like you have a jury trial. In this case, I don't think it's a jury trial, but you have a jury trial, and they take the information that's available to them on a case-by-case basis. I think that's... So there probably have been some kids who have been emancipated at 15, 14. I don't know if it goes less than that. But.
Yeah, I don't understand the nuances behind why it's different age, but the official age is 16, and like I said, I know people that did it. I personally know people that did it 15 somehow. But one thing that wasn't mentioned on that topic is child preference. So when there is a custody battle, they consider the child's choice in the court decision.
Case by case.
But that doesn't start until age 11.
Okay.
And goes between 13. And in most states, at 14 years old, the child is actually officially allowed to choose which parent they want to live with.
Well, the judge gets to make the final decision. In most cases,
that
might not be legal, but that is what practically
in most
happens.
cases, the judge will 100% go with a 14-year-old who says, "I want to live with dad."
But the problem is, you're saying in most cases, in the practical application of things, is that judges just do in family court do what they want under the premise of, or under their own premise if they're a bad judge. Many bad judges, but the premise is supposed to be what is the best interest of the child, which is a flawed premise, and that I'd love to talk about at some point. But the judges will do whatever they want anyway.
And I'll wrap that whole topic up with, it's just a bad system that we're allowing one person to overrule the decision of like 12 peers of your,
It is a horrible system.
It's horrible.
I will tell. No, so I will tell the story one day.
I will go off all day long about how monocentric law is like the worst.
I'll tell the full story one day, and I don't mean to tease this out because I'm not ready to tell the full story. But a American judge put me on a plane against my will and flew me back to France.
I've heard your story.
You
told
me.
It
is fantastic.
Against my will. That is how family court things work.
It's a movie.
Yeah.
It's a movie in the making.
And not just to mention the family court situation, but the courts in America in general are just. This whole monopoly on justice is this is the real issue,
and that's you're not wrong. And it's not only that it's a monopoly, but there is an incentive. It's incentivized by the feds and by the state and by corporations out there that are involved with these judges to do certain things for bureaucracy.
Okay, I want to say one thing. You guys didn't understand why the judge in this case had put a gag order on the parents.
I don't ever understand gag orders.
Okay, I have a little bit
That's
more.
What she said.
I have a little bit more insight onto why that happened. There's two reasons why I believe the judge did that. One was because the father was absolutely, with his website, Save James, he was absolutely trying to gather what we call victims of...
It's public opinion.
Well, hold on. Victims of narcissists have certain terms that we use. And we know these terms to be true because we all agree. But he is gathering what we call flying monkeys to defend him. And he did that with this website. Like, he gathered like this huge collective of flying monkeys to like come to his defense.
I don't disagree with that.
And lot of those were politicians. And this judge is elected.
Sure, of course.
Elected.
Could you define flying monkeys a little bit more?
Well, you've seen Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah. So I'm just trying to
it's low
to assert
low information, outrage,
emotionally charged soldiers that will come and fight on your behalf.
So I
was a monkey.
I'm still trying to assert if or to ascertain if there's intention behind the term flying monkeys. If that means that the person who's gathering the flying monkeys, is that intrinsically that they're misinforming them so that they remain low level, or that's just a consequence?
Oh yeah, no, they are
our
absolutely trying to present a one-sided story so
Okay.
these people will fight on their behalf. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes, there is evil intent behind that.
So the problem with
He's trying to
assigning,
win.
yeah, but the problem with assigning intent to somebody, which I'm sure that I do on the podcast, I talk about evil politicians and so forth.
All the
I
time.
realize is dangerous because first thing, you don't know their intent, and even if their intent was pure, that would just be a consequence that people would jump on board.
I think deception and evoking people's emotions unnecessarily is.
I'm not talking about
intrinsically
this
evil.
case necessarily specifically, but
Well,
in
I
general.
know. I'm just saying this is what typically happens, though.
Okay.
I mean, but
I
you
get
know,
it.
crazy case, right?
I
I
had
mean,
never heard the term, so I am interested in the term.
This guy
as well.
wholly believes that his ex-wife is endangering his kid, and I mean, you know, you're sitting there.
I don't know that he wholly believes that.
You don't think so?
Really?
No, I believe that he knows that that's a way to get people on his side.
So,
It must. So I would think that I would pretty much judge that both parents are trying to do the best for their child. That would be the default that I would go to.
I
All right,
agree.
wait. But so I'm not done with that point though yet.
Okay.
Because there's another reason too, and it's on the mother's side. Well, it's not necessarily on her side, but it's still kind of based on what he did. But the judge put the gag order because of the website that the father had put out. There were actual people showing up at the kid's school who were like throwing rocks through windows and stuff and like endangering kids at the school.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. If some idiot at your kid's school had made a website that incited violence against possibly your kids.
I don't think it necessarily incited violence. I think violence might have happened as a consequence of that, but it's not of the responsibility of the person putting up.
No,
that
you're right.
speech.
The actual term incite did not happen.
No, yeah, unless he actually called for people.
He did
to
not call for
violence.
Okay. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm not, but the judge was actually considering like, hey, these are some things that happened because of your website and you trying to
no fault of his
recruit
own.
all these people.
So I get your point, and you were asking Shane if something would happen like that at your kid's school. So this would be your house, by the way.
I've got the perfect rebuttal.
What's
would
your
you
rebuttal?
would you agree with the gag order?
No. So no.
Would you just take your kids out of school for the week, or
I don't believe in the government indoctrination system
It's-
anyway.
I don't either.
It's a hypothesis.
I homeschool because I don't believe in it that much, and it's one of those things. I don't believe in gag orders because I think it is absolutely
and I'm not agreeing with them.
a
necessarily.
violation.
I'm just explaining why.
What I'm saying is we can draw a conclusion, and I think it's probably in the same vein as allowing people to sue manufacturers of firearms corporations out there because somebody got shot. Like, I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, you're pointing, as much as it's important to know, and I like knowing the reason. You're pointing the blame, or you're not pointing the blame at the right person. The person who speaks, and in my personal opinion, potentially even if they're kind of rambunctious, kind of inciting violence, it's the person who acts who is the responsible party.
Oh, of course.
So at that point,
We have
you
to
need
assign blame.
law enforcement or whatever private system would be better.
Right.
I'm
just saying, okay,
to
so
take the person who throws rocks and says, "Hey, you're not allowed to throw rocks."
The point of bringing that up was that there was pressure on this judge from both sides, like from the politicians,
always gonna
from
be.
the concerned parents. This is why I believe the judge who is elected.
Reversed. Yeah, he reversed.
She, I think it's
She?
female.
He? Yeah.
I believe it's
I don't
female.
know. Let's do.
Not that it matters.
Is he in transition?
Not that. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Not that it matters, but I believe that's why this case has been so confusing, is because this judge themselves have had
He's been all over the place.
a lot of pressure on the political side, the community side to get reelected, and both of them are going to be the ones that reelect this judge.
And I think it's worth talking about for just a half a second too. Is this judge went in 3 stages? He went from siding with the mother to joint custody to siding with the father. And that whole thing, to see a judge go from one end to
it's crazy. Yeah,
you don't see that, man.
What is the term they use when they take the jury and they put them somewhere so they can't be
sequester.
I think the judge should have sequestered himself. If I was a judge, I'd sequester myself and be like, no,
he can recuse himself. Like,
sure,
you can recuse himself.
Making a joke. Like, and also,
it's hard sometimes. I know.
Thank you for laughing, audience. You guys are so much better than these two fools. It was also to make a point that I can acknowledge that this is probably very hard for the judge.
Well, I mean, think about everybody that's trying to wrap their minds around this out there right now. I mean, seriously, this is
and it's a lot to wrap around. It really is. It's way more deeper than you guys originally talked about. That's just why I wanted to have this episode.
And
there's so much more to it.
I've talked about this. This is a new thing in America, man. I mean, this
it's not. No,
in American society,
transgender people have been around since day one.
No. I'm not saying that transgendering. I'm not saying that's new. I'm saying it's
transitioning.
Transition.
The ability to actually go from one sex to the other. It has been
one
around
gender.
Since
I thought we were saying one gender to the other.
Well, I'm saying if you actually
the medical
have the surgery,
okay.
like that ability has been around.
Hold
since
on.
1930.
So at this point, sorry, I've got a side question that I think is interesting. When you do it medically, and you said since 1930, what?
1930.
But that doesn't change your sex because you've got the same chromosomes.
No, it changes your physical outlook. Like
we established at the very beginning that sex was just the chromosomes.
There's no way to change chromosomes.
So okay.
So
is there a term for that then? Because we have gender. We said
is there a term for the surgery? Yes, there is.
We have gender at on one side and sex on the other side. Is there something in the middle for people who can't change their sex but have changed their physical appearance? For people like people get in trouble all the time for using the wrong words, even though their intentions aren't bad. Because none of my intentions
I know
are to harm anybody. And I know that some people would, even if they listen to this podcast, which they probably don't, would think that I'm a piece of crap for saying they can't change their sex. So I'm just talking about chromosomes.
No, there's no way to change your chromosomes.
Correct.
There is no possible way to do that.
And in my best terminology, I call that biological sex. So do we just use the term biological sex and use sex as something different as the physical aspect?
I think we just need to stop getting hung up on terms so much when it comes to that, because it doesn't matter. There are, like I said, there are people with XXY. There are people with different variations of chromosomes. Let them call themselves whatever they want. Like it really doesn't have anything to do with how you need to perceive reality.
Gender doesn't, sex does.
But that's not.
It doesn't necessarily, because there are lots of females out there that are like XY. That don't have like reproductive organs or whatnot. Would you still consider them female?
Really? You mean after a hysterectomy?
No, they're talking about
they're
before.
Like born without them.
Yeah, that happens. I would call if they don't have reproductive organs and they're XX, I would call them.
There's something obviously.
I mean, this is the debate though.
There's something more genetic going on there.
It's not all about chromosomes. It's the determination of one person's sex is not just strictly based on the chromosome.
I thought that's what we had
the
established
ability
at the very beginning.
to reproduce. Like it's not. No, it's not.
Oh, starting over again.
It's okay.
It's all for nothing. No,
and I don't care. People can use different words for different meanings anyway.
I don't think that's
really
the debate here,
that
though.
much.
It's not. The debate is whether the government has any right to say, like, or step in to.
I think it's kids. I think that's the debate for me. Is I don't care what adults do. I don't think most people care what adults do. Nobody gives a damn. What matters to me is holding kids' rights in escrow
correctly.
until they can do whatever the hell they want. And I'm just one of those people.
And it's also about parents and parents' rights against the state.
I don't disagree with that either.
But I think I'm going to put in that when I added to you, the reason I added to you and saying applying children's rights in escrow correctly is because I think people might think that we're just like hyper focused on this issue, and we're not actually that hyper focused on it. We just came to our attention, but this is an issue for every single subject there is. But between the smallest thing of how much TV to let your kids watch to the largest thing,
right,
which is their identity, this is not an issue that makes us hyper focused on this. It's an issue that people and parents especially should be aware of anyways on all the subjects there are.
It could have a lot to do with like parents who have autistic kids too. Like when do we let the state step in to intervene? Like let's say there's some miraculous drug that comes out to cure autism, or not cure it, but like
cannabis.
Mostly. Okay, but that was kind of
sorry.
Let's say that that there is like this huge debate because like if you were allowed your kids to take cannabis, then they might turn into like degenerates. Or
I've heard some people at the state house during the
has
debate
that ever
about,
happened?
I've heard
Michael Phelps.
I've heard some kids some adults talk about how CBD would affect kids, and we can't do the little we've done in Georgia already.
Right. And where do you stand on that?
Where do I stand? I think it's the parents' decision. The parents.
Okay. So why is transgender anything different?
I never said it was anything different.
Okay.
Well,
we're just in a.
It's a problem when obviously the parents disagree for one.
Saying that doesn't mean that I can't have an opinion of what I think is the best course of action. I don't have personal kids.
You are totally allowed to have your own opinion.
I have nieces and nephews, and yet if Shane told me that he was going to, I hope you don't mind this, let his kids smoke cannabis, I think I would have a very big focus on telling Shane that he was stupidly wrong. I hope you don't mind that I involve your kids in that.
No,
but
God,
like
no.
I would tell you that, Shane. I would probably if you didn't agree, it would probably harm the podcast so much that I would stop.
That's
doing
why I
the
love you,
podcast.
because you're going to tell me things that I don't want to hear. Right? Like, hey, dipshit.
It would make me
141.
it would make me intrinsically unhappy, but because I would truthfully think that would be harmful to your kids, and so I would tell you. So
Yeah,
that's why I think the conversation is more important than just the government.
And that's kind of where I come down to is, when I look at this from a developmental standpoint, I see it as introducing a factor that's first and foremost not natural, and I want that kid, whoever that kid is, to have the best informed cognitive decision that they can have.
Right, and I agree. And
I don't think you can make that at that age.
No, that is my last point, though. If you truly believe in the free market, then you have got to trust parents to make the best choices for their kids. Just like they would for themselves.
I agree, but like we said, the problem comes up when parents disagree, right?
That's where the problem comes in, when other parents disagree and pull the government into that disagreement.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is pulling the government in. But you have got to, if somebody who believes in the free market, you have just got to let the free market work.
I don't disagree with that
and
at all.
let parents make decisions for their kids just like they would for themselves, because they are the ones that take
we
care
also
of their own
don't
kids.
live in the free market, though, and as much as I don't like
we do to an extent, though.
Yes, but as much as I don't like to concede to government, I do not argue with them making murder illegal and putting people who have most of the time hopefully gone through a process that's fair in prison for the rest of their lives. Actually, I do not like it when murderers have too little of a sentence. And so in this instance, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, this is what we have, and I don't necessarily, I'm not 100% sure, think that since both parents don't exist in the free market completely, that some kind of, hey, let's do as little irreversible, let's take as little irreversible actions right now, because we have a period in the very near future where that can be made by a fully autonomous, responsible for themselves individual.
So my last question in all of this because I like solutions, right? And I don't think the state's the solution. I don't. I think
Never.
I think there's a smarter decision here. I think there's a smarter, more profound way to do this. And I've thought about this since you started engaging me, and that was one of the shows where the audience really was just very vocal about what we had talked about. Yeah. The idea, in terms of a family that's split, in terms of this understanding on a child that let's face it has ramifications one way or another. It has ramifications.
Yeah, well, everything does,
especially for the child.
Between medical decisions we make, or moral decisions we make for our kids, or religion that we put into our kids' heads, they all have ramifications.
The parents definitely disagree, right? They're polar. It's not reconcilable.
Right.
So the question is,
it doesn't seem reconcilable.
How do we do this? How do we come to a decision for a child when it's irreconcilable between the two adults? And
I think in a free market they would be. So the reason I said it looks like it's not reconcilable is in a free market they would potentially be more forced to come to a reconciliation or a compromise of some sort, but because and I don't know exactly what the free market would look like. I know I interrupted you, but if you're in an impossible situation, you come up with a solution. The thing is, they're in an impossible situation, and then they offloaded the burden of the impossible situation to a third party, and third party has on top of it force and so forth. But if they were constrained to remain in the impossible situation, right, which would probably mean them, I don't know, holding each other hostage, they would be more forced. There'd be more signal for them to come up with a solution instead of being able to extricate themselves preemptively from the impossible situation.
Sometimes
or recruit flying monkeys on their behalf when they can
that's true. The free
force.
market would not be the perfect solution anyways.
No,
horrible things could happen.
I agree.
Well.
And so
no. Of course, the free market's never a perfect solution. That's not the intent of it.
I'm sorry, Shane. I know I took off.
It's all good.
I didn't mean to.
What I'm saying is, instead of going to the courts, instead of going to juries, instead of going to, unbiased third parties, why don't we look at the family? And most people who have kids have a will, and in that will there is somebody who, if my wife and I both die, somebody gets kids, right? Mm-hmm. And you look at these people who actually are intimate with the family, and I don't know, if you look at this partially, because I know obviously not all families are the same. Some families don't exist because, well, let's just give the normal American family where you have aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and moms and dads and all this kind of stuff, right, from both sides. Mm-hmm. And you look at this and you have these people who are closest to this step in, and I don't know, 5, 6, maybe an even number, so that when you come to this decision for this child, it's not that this person gets to rule over this child's life or this person as a parent gets to rule over this child's life. But now, because we're irreconcilable, we have people who are actually part of this family sit here, or close personal friends who they are willed to one way or another in case of their potential demise.
Right. And so this would be predetermined or pre-established?
Pre-established.
Okay.
And this is something we don't talk about.
No, I think that's a great idea. And when we talk about how the free market comes to good ideas, it is often, and sadly this involves individuals' lives, it is often through creative destruction. So bad things have to happen for good ideas to things.
Exactly.
So
that's
if this kept on being a bad idea, if there kept on being bad consequences or bad things that happened, I hate the very simplistic terminology, then people might say, hey, we're getting married. We should probably write a contract together on what happens when XYZ happens.
That's right.
We're going to ask banks' wives to make all the decisions if we can't agree.
I think when
Another joke, people.
Yeah, it's so flat. You're going to be a great stand-up comedian. What I'm saying is I think people who actually understand and know the family intimately and have a working understanding and relations with them are going to be exponentially more cognitive and loving in their decision for this child than any court system or state or third, unintentional body could ever
some
possibly
random social worker
could ever be.
Yeah. So I've got a weird question.
Sure.
And if you guys want to ignore it, it's totally fine. Let's
Just kidding.
It is totally fine
All right.
because it's kind of out of left field, but it's something I think about quite often. Do you think that a child, let's say that a parent is quite subpar, right? For whatever reasons, they're just not the greatest parent, not good example. They might beat them sometimes. They might
Just work too much.
whatever it is. There's different things, some from more atrocious than others. Do you think that the child is better off with that parent or being extricated from that relationship by the state?
I think they're absolutely better off with the parent.
Yeah.
And that's something that even the state is coming to realize now. Regardless of what your quality of life for your kid is, like, it's still better off to be with both parents than it is to, like,
Because
limit. Just because you don't agree with somebody's parenting skills does not mean that that kid does not love that parent or that, you know.
The more I grow up, the more I go to thinking that so if at first that's like my basic thought, I think of all the bad things parents can do, from like not horrible harm to some harm, and I don't want children to be harmed whatsoever.
Oh, harm is
The
subjective.
more I think that it's better to be with the parent despite horrible consequences, even though I want the best for kids.
well, you're not wrong. And
You're gonna make me drink this stout, aren't you?
we're gonna finish up. I got a Wild Leap IPA downstairs. You're gonna love.
All right, we'll hold off.
Yeah, we'll give that to somebody who likes stouts. I think this has been a great example of how people should talk to each other that may have misunderstandings or debates or complete 180 opposition to each other in terms of an opinion. I exemplary, and I appreciate both of you guys doing this, man. I mean, this has been awesome. I hope it's informed our audience as well.
I hope so. Too.
I hope so as well.
That's
I
the only
know
reason
that-
why I did it.
Yeah,
You can come back and talk about this kind of stuff.
I'll come back and talk about anything.
Whatever.
One thing I will. No.
No. If there's something else,
just one more thing.
If
No,
there's
I
something
really-
else, please tell us.
no,
Please tell us. Please.
Having nothing to do with transgender issues.
Sure.
Well, actually, there's a lot of things that we don't know about transgender stuff. And I'll come back and talk about other things like property rights and stuff like that. Like, because I am an anarchist. I know Banks knows that. Maybe you didn't. But there are a couple things that we do know.
Come give me a hug because
There are several. Well,
I'm
gonna
leaning your
go over
way, man.
two actual facts that we do know.
Sure.
Taxation is theft, and Epstein did not kill himself.
Bam. Mic drop. See you later. We're out.
If you've enjoyed the show, you can go to patreon.com/RebellionPod to give us money, because I really did also enjoy this episode.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it. Like, I usually have
Hang out.
I got pee.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
When you go out to the left.
usually like I'll prep at least like outside and then to the left.
Yeah, don't go in
Well,
there.
the second left. The first left is the laundry room.
Yeah, no, not there either.
But I will usually at least in my mind think about the show. I didn't think about it at all, which I think I could do with anybody, but it was specifically easier because, well, Stephen, like Ron Paul movement, like we spent hours talking about liberty and playing poker and just trying to get Ron Paul elected, which it bonds you. But I think that if people are able to drop their guard, like I think all three of us did, like I didn't have much
No
of a guard
preconceived
up,
notion,
then the conversation's really cool. It kind of makes it a little bit messy, but messy is probably what liberty looks like.
Oh, it's life. Life is real messy, man. What that's a commercial. Life is messy. Clean it up. I don't know, but I'll tell you right now. I love what we've done today. We've recorded 2 shows. You guys heard the first one on Monday. Somewhat, there's debate.
There was some contention.
And contention. Sure. And this is what we need. We need to challenge each other in respectful, caring, loving ways. And you know what? Most of the time, we all kind of agree that the state isn't the damn answer. We're the answer. Our families are the answer. Our communities are the answer. Our neighborhoods. Those are the answers. You're the answer. If you want to do something, do it in this world and be respectful of other people who do it damn differently than you. That's it. It's super simple. This is not like life isn't as hard as most people want to make it, and we've become so damn comfortable in our ivory white towers here in America, where we found and promoted new problems to be outraged and upset about. Like this.
Yeah, but look at what without the outrage and the conversation of this, I think that this is a consequence of the partial free market that still exists.
But we're not outraged.
Because,
That's the thing is this.
well,
there was some.
yes, no, we talked about this because
Okay.
we were outraged to some degree,
Sure.
and Steven participated because he was outraged to some degree.
And we're
it's
still
a
outraged.
respectful conversation, but it's part of outrage. And so what I'm saying is, what birthed this conversation is, I would hope, mostly the free market of ideas and how the market works that still exists within the world, even with the courts involved and the government involved, and that's so it's a good thing.
Yeah, we're wrapping up. I really wanted to thank you for doing this. I wanted to thank you for having that I don't know, that internal burn to come in here and do this show with us. Awesome. I mean, this was a great show. I think it's opened my eyes to some things. I think I've definitely learned a ton from listening to you, and to be able to kind of agree for the most part on the definitions, on how much is unknown, on just the whole myriad of an hour and 55 minutes now.
I would like to ask him the short questions at the end.
Sure, let's do it. I mean, we're there.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
we do
that.
speed.
I'm sorry.
We do speed round, and Banks and I always love to. I like to find out what people like in terms of reading. So, what's your favorite book or author or type of
Tolkien.
reading? What?
Tolkien.
Ooh. Really? I actually watched a little Lord of the Rings last night.
Yeah.
Who was an anarchist, for those who don't know?
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Which series do you like better? That you like The Hobbit, or do you like the Lord of the Rings better?
Well, I started with The Hobbit, but Lord of the Rings obviously was more in depth. So
Do you like it better?
And the Silmarillion, like I've read a little bit of that too. A lot of people don't even know about that.
The Silmarillion.
Yeah, it goes more into depth into like the history of Middle Earth. But yeah, it's a good series.
Cool.
If you've never
All right.
read that, that's good.
What are you into that's not politics? Like something you're hyper focused about, you think is the coolest thing. It can be a new type of coffee, a sport, whatever.
Fortnite.
Really?
Oh, you want to go play with my boys?
Oh yeah.
They're. I'll tell you right
I'll
now.
wreck some people.
I'll tell you right now, man.
I'll wreck you.
I would have never guessed.
Jackson is my 8-year-old now.
Oh, my son's 10, and he is. I have trained this boy. I am so proud of myself.
That's so good.
He will wreck you. I swear.
Hey, trust me, I'm not the gamer, man. I like games. I don't get to play them anymore because all I do is work.
I heard you guys talk about Fortnite on another episode, and I was like, oh.
No,
Just wait. I need to meet Shane, and his kids have got to meet my. And I'll tell you,
we can swap gamer tags after it's all done.
I'm not the best parent, honestly. My kid, he's a little bit of a rager. Okay, he does rage. We're working on this.
Yeah.
We are working on this, and
Testosterone
I'm trying to
blockers.
keep. No. I'm trying to keep his rage level down a little bit, and we're working on this thing. But my kid's who he is, and we're going through some stuff. But anyways, I want my kids to play with your kids for real, and he's respectful. He's very respectful of other kids whose parents have rules that I might not have.
That's cool, man. Because these kids, if he's a rage, these guys are all in jiu-jitsu. Dude, they'll.
I'm talking mostly about words.
What I'm saying is
words that are used during gameplay, and I'm limiting them. But there have been a few slip-ups, and I know not all parents.
They
are
don't.
Okay with
so
that.
that's one of the things. They don't get to use mics. They don't get to hang out with those kids. Or whoever the anonymous are. They play with each other on teams and duos and all that.
Right. And my kid's got a few friends that we know each other personally. And
Sure.
we do that.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
yeah, I wanted to.
It's a weird world. Another conversation for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of outside, Banks asked this question a lot, and I think it's a very pertinent question. Have you had your mind changed on anything on terms of on a topic? Have you kind of done 180 degrees on anything, or what was the most recent thing you did?
My mind changed as far as politically involved, or
On anything, I guess.
Any subject really. I mean, if you found homemade ranch dressing with buttermilk and mayonnaise to be far superior to the store-bought ranch, I mean,
we usually do politics, but
whatever.
His homemade ranch is.
I do. I want to say one thing. I don't know if your audience is anarchist or.
I think
They're
we
a
have a
plethora.
real healthy mix. Because I'll tell you,
So-
I mean, I lean there, man. I like.
Are they? I would assume mostly ANCAPs.
and caps, libertarian or liberty
Right.
Republican type?
They at least know what those topics are,
Oh,
right? Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, if they've listened, they've heard the topic. But
All
there
right.
are some liberals who listen.
Okay. So, I've been in discussions with ANSOCs and ANCAPs for years, since 2012. I've been
And Sox would be anarcho-syndicalist, for those who don't know.
anarcho-socialist.
Socialist. Okay,
Yeah.
that we don't use that term that much.
Weird.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've been in conversations with them online for since 2012, almost 10 years now. And there is one thing that I've come to the conclusion that I am not an anarcho-capitalist. I'm just an anarchist, and that is based on property ownership.
Oh.
On the idea that like you can actually own property.
Right.
Because I'll try to sum it up real quick, but like I think you can only own something that you put your labor into, and you did not create the earth, so you therefore cannot own it. You can own a farm or a
Yeah, you can work the land.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But land ownership, titles to land, that's just the
It's
government.
weird.
Well,
I agree.
well,
Or
I mean,
banks.
so
Banks, right?
I think it's kind of weird.
Yeah, but backed up by force.
Yeah.
So I'm really exploring that issue right now, and I'd love to talk about that later on.
Okay.
It kind of depends. It kind of depends what force, because right now we just don't know because we're dealing with the government force. What?
Right. That's the only thing we know.
How would the free market adapt to the fact that right now one person can own 1 million acres, which he obviously can't protect himself,
He can't
Yeah,
even walk.
that's a big
and could potentially not even have enough wealth to purchase the protection for all of it because of the practical ramifications of that. Yeah,
I agree.
That's a cool subject.
It is a cool subject. I'm interested in, but it's something I was totally. Anarcho-capitalism has to be it.
You switched on it.
But
That's
now
cool.
I'm like, maybe there's some other solution.
Yeah. I think
And for
so.
all the marbles, which I don't get to ask this
You
question.
don't ever
that much.
ask this question.
For all the marbles.
I don't think you like asking this question.
It's all in fun. It's not serious. Don't take this seriously, people. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Banks, you're yeah. I mean,
I kid. I don't care what people respond.
maybe in France, cats are a little more feasible.
I don't think so.
My kids have 5 cats at their house, and I just,
Yeah,
dogs.
Yeah. I love it. Well, hey, thank you again for coming in and doing this. This has been the Rebellion, your place for peace, liberty, and free markets. If you have found a whole lot of value in this, you want to help us out monetarily, you can go to patreon.com/rebellionpod. If you want to send us anything, you can go to info@rebellionpod and send us any type of thing you want to bring to our attention. Maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe we'll post it. And we need reviews. Lots and lots and lots and lots of reviews. If you've listened to 5 episodes, I'd ask for something in return. I'd ask you to go out there and leave us a review on Apple or Lisbon or whatever podcast you listen to. It pushes us up in the algorithm, and it helps us reach more and more people. Other than that, Banks, you got anything?
Couldn't have said it better, Shane. This has been your place for peace, liberty, and free markets. We love you.
We need you.
Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.